The night was unnervingly silent, the kind of silence that makes you hear sounds in your own home that don't exist. I was living alone in a rented apartment on the outskirts of the city, an old area characterized by cramped buildings and narrow alleys. It was past 2 a.m. and I was sitting at my laptop, working on a new video edit for my channel. The only light in the room came from the computer screen, casting long, flickering shadows against the walls around me. Suddenly, I felt a sharp chill invade the room, as if a window had been opened somewhere in the apartment. I stopped working and listened intently. At first, I heard nothing but the hum of the laptop fan spinning rapidly. But after a few seconds, I heard a very faint sound, a groan coming from the wooden floorboards in the hallway leading to the kitchen. It was a familiar sound, the one the floor makes when someone steps on it very slowly, trying not to be detected. I froze in my seat, my breath quickening, my mind trying to convince me the house was just old, and these were natural sounds. I stood up very slowly, gripping my phone like a weapon, and headed toward the bedroom door with cautious steps. I cracked the door open slightly and peered through the narrow slit into the dark hallway ending at the open kitchen door. There was nothing there, only the still darkness swallowing every familiar piece of furniture. I decided to turn on the hallway light, but when I flipped the switch, nothing happened. The bulb had apparently burned out. That was when real terror began to creep into my heart. The idea that I wasn't alone turned from a suspicion into a horrifying certainty. I retreated into my room, locked the door, and sat directly behind it with my back pressed against the cold wood. I took out my phone and opened the security camera app I had recently installed in the living room to watch my cat. The image was in black and white, grainy and full of static, but it was clear enough to see what was happening. At first, the camera showed no movement. The living room was completely empty, just as I had left it hours ago. But then I noticed something strange in the corner of the screen. There was a shadow moving slowly behind the large sofa. The shadow wasn't a cat. It belonged to a very tall man wearing a dark coat that covered him from head to toe. The man was crawling on all fours in an unnatural way, like an animal stalking its prey in the forest. My breath hitched as I watched him approach my bedroom door, the very door I was currently sitting behind. The man reached the door and stopped completely. I could see his pale hand reaching for the doorknob very slowly. The knob began to turn downward, inch by inch. I could clearly hear the sound of metal grinding from where I sat. Fortunately, I had turned the lock so the door didn't open, but the man didn't give up. He began to press with more force. At that moment, my phone rang in my hand. It was a call from a completely unknown number. I didn't answer, but the sound was loud. The man behind the door suddenly stopped moving the knob, and a deathly silence fell over the entire apartment for several seconds. Then I heard a sound coming from the other side of the door. It wasn't a scream or a threat, but a very faint chuckle. It was a dry laugh, as if the person hadn't laughed in many years, and then I heard the sound of his footsteps receding. I checked the camera again and saw him head toward the living room window, open it quietly, and leap out into the dark. I didn't dare open the door until morning, and when the police arrived, they found no trace of a break-in through the doors. But they found something in the living room that made the detective step back and tell me to leave the apartment immediately. Behind the sofa, where the man had been hiding, they found a collection of knives arranged in a perfect circle on the floor. In the center of the circle was a photo of me, taken from an impossible angle, from inside my own bedroom closet. I later discovered that this person hadn't just entered that night. He had been living in the crawl space beneath the floorboards. He would come out at night to perform his strange rituals while I slept, watching my every move through the cracks in the wood. I left that apartment that day and never returned, and I never leave a room dark in my new home no matter what. True horror isn't the monsters we see in movies, but the person who decides to share your life without your knowledge. Every time I hear a sound in my house now, I remember that dry laugh and remember that locked doors aren't always enough. Safety is just an illusion we live until we discover there is someone watching us from the corners we usually ignore. I've changed my life completely. I've become obsessed with security, with cameras, and with complex locks everywhere. But deep in my heart, I know that whoever wants to get to you will always find a way, even if it's from under your feet. This is the story I haven't told anyone in detail, because talking about it makes me feel like he might return at any moment. The tale has ended, but the anxiety has not, and I will always check behind the sofa before I go to sleep every night.